Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Happy New Year! I hope you picked up your copy of Deikan, the most haunted locations in Japan, for some terrifying reading over the holidays. New Year's is, of course, one of the biggest holidays in Japan, and to celebrate the first episode of 2019, we have two terrifying stories for you. If you think of cursed boxes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? If you're a Japanese creepypasta fan, chances are good that you'll think of the dreaded Kotoribako, a story we covered on Kowabana last year. On this episode, we're going to be looking at two more cursed boxes, because the story of the Kotoribako was so large and so influential that it spawned its own genre of cursed box stories. The first cursed box story we're going to be looking at this week is called Kowabana. During the spring of my first year at university, I went on a bike tour with my local bike store. Our goal was Kodokoro Hot Spring, just a short distance before Mount Odaigahara in Nara. Head of the line was veteran Taki-san. Behind him was Kenta, who had 2 years of touring experience. Kenta wanted to be the lead, but the organizers wanted someone who could lead with a decent, but not too fast pace, so he was rejected. Several of the tour members were elderly, so I suggested they just let Kenta go on ahead, but again they refused. "He'll get carried away," they claimed. It was decided that I would hold up the rear of the tour, riding at the end of the line. I had been to the Yamabatoyu hot spring near our goal several times before, so of course I knew all the break spots along the way. I wasn't too worried if the tour got a little ahead of me. I took my time. Kenta, on the other hand, was fine while we were in the city, but the moment we reached the mountains and cars became few and far between, he took off, overtaking the lead. I was the last person to enter the designated cafe for break time, and the rest of the tour was in the middle of a heavy discussion. "Look, when you're with the group, you need to act as part of the group, okay?" "Ugh, come on. You guys are too slow." "Idiot. If you ride off by yourself and have an accident, don't you see how that's going to become a problem for the rest of us as well?" "And what do you think's going to happen if you ride over a snake? Huh?" "Huh? A snake? But I already rode over one." The group froze at his words and disinterested tone. I don't know how it is in other places, but where we live, there's a legend that states if you stand on a snake in the mountains during spring, then you'll trip over nothing in particular and fall over the edge of a cliff. Bike and all. Doesn't matter if you're alone or in a group. No exceptions. But Kenta wasn't worried, even when they told him as much. Rather, he laughed out loud in their faces. "That's stupid. It's just a superstition." When coffee time was over, we got back on our bikes. To the left was the lake and a river created by the nearby dam, and to the right was a series of cliffs. The road was wide and flat, perfect for bike riding. Even Kenta rode with us at a quiet pace. We took a gentle right turn, and about 100 meters after that was a large left turn. Taki-san rode at the head as we approached the turn. Then it happened. Someone and their bike fell from the line to the left and over the edge. They fell right underneath the guardrail. Everyone stopped and ran to see who it was. Kenta and his bike were lying on the ground at the bottom. "Kenta!" we called out, but there was no response. Stones often fell from the cliffs during spring. Higashi-san picked one up and threw it at Kenta to see if he was still alive. He moved when it hit his right thigh. He was alive. The swift Motoki-san ran to the nearby public phone. Maru-chan from the bike shop took several photos and then returned to get a car to pick up the broken bike. The well-prepared veterans of the group lowered a rope and pulled the bike up, but Kenta complained that his back was sore, so they left him there. Apparently, he rode over a rather large snake, and his bike was so messed up that it looked like it had been through an explosion. Kenta was hospitalized with a broken tailbone, right femur, and several other bones. The bike was a write-off. "We told you, idiot. Step on a snake and something terrible will happen." Kenta himself spends his time imparting the same wisdom upon the young now. In August, during the summer of my first year at university, my younger brother and I decided to take a trip to Yamagata. I went to the bike shop to have my bike looked at before I left. "Morning," I greeted the staff, and the person Maru-chan was chatting with slowly turned around. "Ah, Naito-san. Long time no see, hey?" Kenta was smiling back at me. "My name isn't Naito. How many times do I have to tell you?" For some reason, Kenta always called me Night-san, like day and night. But of course, with his accent, it sounded like he was calling me Naito-san. "How's your health?" "Yeah, okay. Just got out of the hospital last week and had the bolt taken out the day before yesterday." "Yokaze-san," Maru-chan said to me. "You gotta do something. Kenta's back on his bike already." "I told you, it's fine. It's easier for me to ride than it is to walk." Kenta smiled, while Maru-chan looked conflicted. "Anyway," Kenta continued, "my parents wanted to thank everyone for what they did that time. So if you like, they wanted me to ask you guys to come around. Our house has just been renovated, so everything is real nice. We're celebrating that as well. I live out Kaochidani way. But how about it?" "I'd love to," I said. "But wouldn't so many of us just be trouble?" "We live out in the countryside, so we could easily fit 10 or 20 people. No problem." In the end, we contacted everyone who was on the tour, and Taki-san, Higashi-san, Motoki-san, and myself agreed to visit Kenta's house. Kaochidani can be found in Soni village, on the border between Nara and Mie prefectures. It's in the middle of Muro-Kazan district, which has numerous courses for hiking fans. In particular, there's a place near Kenta's house called Kigan Zeppeki, which translates roughly to strangely shaped cliffs. That's especially famous. As soon as we arrived, Kenta's parents lowered their heads in gratitude and thanked us for what we did for their son. Taki-san, the eldest and most worldly, politely thanked them in return, and we followed suit. Then Kenta interrupted us and showed us inside. Everything was already laid out for us, the table packed to the brim with food and drinks. There was so much that I wondered just how they expected us to finish it all. I'm not a drinker, so I went around sampling all the food, but even my stomach has its limits. Which is to say nothing of the fact that it was my first time as a guest in their house, so I didn't want to indulge in any disgraceful behavior. At some point, Kenta left to go to the bathroom, and when he returned, he was holding something wrapped in a cloth. We didn't think there was anything left there, but when I went to the storehouse, we found rice bowls and such leftovers. We moved everything to the main wing of the house, but then amongst all that, we found this. Inside the cloth was a box, about the size of a rice bowl, covered in white paper. The bottom of it is kinda strange, Kenta continued. He flipped the bottom paper up roughly. Inside was more black paper, and a red string tied around the box like a cross. I got this from somewhere, but when I asked my parents about what's inside, they said they had no idea. Kenta's father remained silent, nodding in agreement. I figured Taki-san might know something about it, seeing as he's familiar with these sorts of things. Well, can't hurt to have a look at it, I suppose, Taki-san said. Whether I'll know anything about it is another story, though. Please. Kenta handed him the box, and Taki-san went to undo the red string. Then, suddenly, and very loudly, my phone started to ring. Shit! Everyone froze. I was the most surprised of all. I set the phone to silent before we got there, so why was it ringing out loud? I apologized several times and pressed the answer button. My mother's voice rang out across the room. Don't touch it! Don't open that box! It was so loud that everyone heard it. It nearly blew my eardrums out. No one moved a muscle. Hi, Mum. What the hell are you talking about? That's what I wanted to ask, but suddenly she screamed again. It's a Kowabana! Don't touch it! Put it back in the wrapping! Taki-san placed the box on the ground without thinking. Did you hear me? Hey, are you listening? A loud tone rang out, piercing our ears. Yeah, we heard you, I replied in pain. And what do you want us to do? Do we just have to wrap it up again? It was wrapped in white paper, right? Put that back as it was. Then put it in a bowl or something similar, on top of some salt. The first time you do it, the salt will dissolve, but by the 7th time, it'll stop. Then, put it back in the original cloth and leave it in the storeroom. I'll come over later to collect it. I explained to the room what my mother told me, and Taki-san put the box back in the white paper, twitching the whole time. Kenta ran to the kitchen to fetch some salt and a bowl. Everyone watched as the salt melted like toffee. Kenta hurried to grab another bowl. The second time it was a little slow, but it continued to melt like toffee. Then the third time, and the fourth time, and by the 5th time, it started to show signs of change. Only half the salt melted, and half remained the same. The 6th time, it steamed a little, but that was it. Then, the 7th time. Just like my mother said, the salt did nothing. It didn't sizzle, nor did it melt. Kenta put the box back in the cloth and looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Naito-san, but could you possibly come with me?" "Sure," I said. "But stop calling me Naito." The night wore on, and a heavy rain started to fall. Thunder roared nearby. I hoped it would clear up by morning. We were lying in bed when suddenly we heard a faint sound from somewhere, like psh, 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 and then a bang and a crash from underground. Did lightning strike somewhere? It had to have. I got up and ran to the window, but I couldn't see anything. The rain continued to pelt down. I gave up and went back to bed. The next morning, we discovered that lightning did strike. Only the outside of the storehouse remained. The inside completely burnt out. The roof was entirely gone. It was a coincidence, right? Yeah, it had to be. Everyone nodded in agreement and went home. The morning mountain roads seemed to sparkle after being drenched in heavy rains. You might be wondering what that box was about. My mother has a stupidly powerful ability to sense the supernatural, which is how she knew we had it at the time. As for the Kowabana, I heard it's a box used by fortune tellers and witches for curses. It's a tool they dedicate to the spirits. I didn't see what was inside it at the time though, so I can't say for certain just what was inside. Like the Kotoribako, this next box is a puzzle that must be solved before it can be opened, much like a Rubik's Cube. But some puzzles are better left unsolved. This one's called Regret. Today, I'm going to tell you about something I've been suffering from for the last 9 years. I hope the people who hear this story will come to understand my fear and regret, and I hope that by sharing it, that the shadows in my memories will become just a little brighter. 9 years ago, I started work for an insurance company. Just after the start of my 3rd year, I became a chief clerk and had 4 people working beneath me. 3 of those, who I'll call I-kun, T-kun, and Y-san, I was on such good terms with that we went drinking together at least twice a week. The other person doesn't have anything to do with this story, so I'll leave them out. One day, the 4 of us went to a bar for some food and drinks, and after we were done paying, we left to go home. Suddenly, I-kun pulled out this worn-out old box, about the size of an apple, and showed it to us. It was a puzzle box, like those Rubik's Cubes that used to be popular. Once all the colors lined up, then it would open. According to I-kun, he got it from his father, who had it for a long time before that. Apparently, it was made before the Second World War. My father could never open it, but when he gave it to me, he said he picked it up from the remains of a fire after the war. I-kun said. Over 2 generations, no one had been able to open the box. The moment I saw it, a chill ran down my spine. Was I unknowingly able to sense the supernatural? I was, on occasion, able to see people whose upper and lower bodies were out of balance, or small animals that were missing or had no legs at all. I watched T-kun and Y-san take turns turning the box and pulling on it, and for some reason, I grew fearful. I think I was perhaps scared that they would open it, but in the end, no one was able to get it open that day. It only took the taxi 5 minutes to arrive after we left the bar, so of course that wasn't long enough to open the puzzle box. After that, everyone returned home safely. The next day, I-kun brought the box to work. T-kun and Y-san were fascinated by it, and when I was sitting at my desk during lunch doing some work, Y-san dragged T-kun over with the box. I knew they weren't going to like what I had to say, and prepared myself for the inevitable. Then I warned them. "I don't think you should open that box," I said. "My brother said the same thing," Y-san said with a suspicious look on his face. But then he changed his tune and said boastfully, "But I'm gonna open it soon. Just you wait and see." I went back to my work, and that was the last we spoke during lunch. After work the next day, the four of us decided to go see the cherry blossoms. We went to the park near work and had Japanese-style soup from Y-san's mother while looking at the flowers. Then T-kun said, "The view is beautiful here. Why don't we finish up with a photo of the four of us?" and pulled out an instant camera. We stood in front of a rather large tree and took the photo. It sure was an amazing photo, but there was something strange about it. It was night, so there was no worry of excessive light, and it was an open space, so there was no worry of strange light from the flash. "This type of thing happens sometimes," T-kun said, and we took another photo together. But the same thing happened again. "Maybe too much light is entering because it's a wide shot," T-kun said. "Let's try taking the photos one by one." I went first, followed by Y-san, I-kun, and T-kun. My photo turned out fine. So did Y-san's. But the problem was I-kun. Just like the first photos we took, the photo had a strong red tinge to it. We took another photo. This time, all around him was a faint yellow, not red. Freaked out, I-kun asked T-kun to take one more photo. "Something's wrong," T-kun said when he was done, and walked over to show us. I-kun's face and hands were almost completely hidden behind countless yellow hands coming from all directions. His lower half was also dyed a vivid red. Seeing this, I-kun confessed to something he hadn't told us yet. Today, when I was in the printing room after lunch, I was playing with the puzzle box while I was copying something, and it opened. But inside was an old bag that said, "For the Emperor, filled with honorable death." When I opened the bag, it was full of nails and hair clippings. It grossed me out, so I threw them in the incinerator. We went to visit a temple with the photos and told them what happened. "What you've done is terribly dangerous," the monk said. "Even if we hold a service with this photo, it won't calm the angry spirits. Bring me the wooden box. If we can hold a service with it, we may be able to save the spirits trapped inside it as well. Please, bring it to me at all costs." The monk urged us to go home that night, but it proved to be the last time we would ever see I-kun. The next morning, we heard that Aikun was hit by a car on his way home. The impact tore him in half. The top half of his body got caught up in the flaming car's tire and burnt up with it, while his lower body was found 20 meters away. He died instantly. We received the box from his mother and then took it to the monk at the temple. "This box is hatred itself," he said. "It's no longer something for people to possess. It will be difficult to calm the spirit's rage. I'd like to hold a service, but it'll take time. Is that okay with you?" The spirits had taken Aikun in less than half a day. To us, that was too long, and we had him teach us some prayers that we could say ourselves. Around December of that year, we started to forget the fear we once had. Then, Y-san died in a house fire. Apparently the cause was a faulty heater. T-kun and I were the only ones left, and scared, we asked to be transferred to new branches. We thought that if we moved away from where everything took place, maybe the spirits would forget about us. But as much as I didn't want to think about it, chances were high that the spirits had already attached themselves to us. T-kun and I reached a mutual understanding and went our separate ways. But we were naive, and it wasn't until later that we were made to fully understand what was going on. 9 years have passed since that time. 9 horrific years. 2 years after T-kun transferred, he got married. After that, his wife gave birth to their first child, but 6 months later, the child died of pneumonia. Their second and third children were miscarriages, and then his wife developed a brain tumor. She became comatose, gradually lost all strength in her body, and finally fell ill to a sickness that would eventually take her life. Then, during the autumn of the 6th year, she passed away. T-kun must have suffered greatly, because in the spring of the following year, he jumped from the roof of his company building and killed himself. 2 years have passed since then, bringing us to the present. I've been suffering more and more from severe heart palpitations these days. Not only that, but I've been seeing my 3 former colleagues in my dreams as well. I don't know what's waiting for me in the near future, but I hope these chronic heart palpitations are just a result of stress. I'm the only one left of the 4 of us, however, so I don't think I have much more time left. If you've come this far and listened to my whole story, I sure would appreciate if you could put your hands together and pray for me. Maybe that might help appease the spirits. But maybe not. So what did you guys think about this week's stories? If there are any particular themes you'd like to see on the show this year, you can let me know over on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Tara A. Devlin. And if you'd like to get bonus episodes and early access to each and every episode, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.